Coming up on Lawmakers, the Lieutenant Governor promotes a plan to make life easier for reservists who serve in Iraq. The crackdown on methamphetamine traffic may begin at the pharmacy. And details of today's budget briefings. Those stories and more tonight on Lawmakers.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Wednesday, January 19th. Here are your hosts, Nwandi Lawson and Gerald Bryant.
Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers. Also coming up tonight, First Lady Mary Perdue encourages companies and communities of faith to get involved in child welfare reform.
And environmental activists speak out about how the state enforces clean water laws. But our top story tonight, a major retailer sets up shop in Liberty County. Today, Governor Perdue made two announcements that may soon provide a boost to the state's economy, including a major retail corporation building a new distribution center in southeast Georgia. Lawmakers Chriss Knight joins us live from the Capitol with more. Chris.
In Nwandi, today, the governor announced that Target will build a new distribution center in Liberty County. Construction on the 1.5 million square foot facility will begin this fall. And with the new center will come hundreds of new jobs to the state.
Initially, it will create 450 jobs as a startup and eventually 800 total jobs. That's good news for Georgia families. These are well-paid, well-benefit jobs that Target has a reputation for treating their employees extremely well in these facilities, and we appreciate that very, very much.
Construction on this facility is expected to be completed in 2007. Also today, the governor, with the support from internet service provider Earthlink, unveiled proposed legislation that would fight against deceptive emails commonly referred to as spam. The Slam Spam Email Act would impose serious penalties to those who prey on internet users by sending those unwanted junk emails to thousands of email accounts.
Sending spam to Georgians, this is how strong we feel about it, will be punishable as a felony under certain conditions, where spammers send a high volume, more than 10,000 messages in a 24-hour time period, more than $1,000 in revenue from a single spam message, or more than $50,000 from all spam transmitted to a single ISP.
According to the governor, businesses lose nearly $20 billion a year fighting spam. Reporting live, I'm Chriss Knight for Lawmakers.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Meanwhile, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor is proposing legislation to provide financial assistance and a tax break for Georgia National Guardsmen and Reservists.
We live in and are raising our families in a state with more than 12,000 guardsmen, approximately 8,000 in the Army National Guard and approximately 3,000 in Georgia's Air National Guard. Right now, more than 4,000 Georgians are either training for deployment or are already deployed in Iraq. These times are hard on families. They create economic turmoil for the service member, for their families, and even for their communities. Today, I am proposing historic economic relief for our exceptional soldiers. I call it HEROES for short. I know the first thing you'll want to know is the cost. Let me preface this by saying that you can't put a price on what these men and women do for us. The small price tag for this great sacrifice is only $5.2 million. That's less than all the pork projects in last year's budget combined.
The HEROES legislation would provide cash grants to families of Guard members in distress. Private individuals and businesses could contribute, and a tax checkoff system is being proposed. Another bill would provide a state income tax exemption for Georgia National Guard and U.S. reservists who are called to active duty for 90 days in a row. A Georgia GI bill is proposed that would provide tuition grants to Guard members returning from duty. That's intended to help them update job skills. And a fourth provision would require the state to pay the premiums for a $250,000 life insurance for Guard members. Again, the projected cost is $5.2 million. Now, Lieutenant Governor Taylor says he expects the bill to have bipartisan support. Governor Sonny Perdue's Communications Director, Dan McGlagan, says there have been no discussions between the governor and Lieutenant Governor on this proposed legislation.
Well, legislation aimed to make the manufacturing of methamphetamine more difficult has been drafted in both the House and Senate. Senate Bill 24 and House Bill 45 would require pseudoephedrine used in cold medicines like Sudafed to be sold behind the counter. David Zelski joins us live with more. David.
Well, thanks, Nwandi. Pseudoephedrine is a key ingredient in making meth. These bills would not require a doctor's prescription, but a purchaser would need to sign and show a photo ID to the pharmacist or sales clerk. $200, a grocery store, and a household kitchen are all someone needs to manufacture meth. This highly addictive drug has many names.
Crank, speed.
Yellow, go fast.
High speed, chicken feed.
Crystal.
Ice.
And wreaks havoc on a human's body and mind.
Meth is the most destructive drug that you could take because of the seriousness of how quickly it can become addictive, how serious the damage is, and how long-lasting it can be, in fact, possibly permanently.
But taking the drug isn't the only danger. The cooking of meth has led to numerous explosions, death, and most of all, endangered children. Douglas County recently passed the state's first ordinance for selling pseudoephedrine behind the counter. Senator Bill Hamrick, who represents that county, is the sponsor of Senate Bill 24, which aims to make this a statewide law.
The goal is to make it more difficult to manufacture the drug. And, you know, there'll still be ways that people can get around it, but if we make it more difficult, then maybe we'll make a dent in the problem.
Governor Perdue hosted a meth summit in August. Senator Hamrick's bill is one of the recommendations that came from the summit.
Methamphetamine can kill you fast. Methamphetamine can kill you slow. But in the end, methamphetamine is going to kill you.
Now, Governor Perdue hosted a meth summit in August which hoped to crack down on a lot of these problems. Senator Hamrick's bill is just one of the 25 recommendations that came from the summit. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks for that update, David. In other news, last year the chairman of the State Pardon and Paroles Board told legislators today that his officers often discover meth labs when they're making visits to parolees. In his testimony at Capitol budget briefings, Milton Nix said a high percentage of parolees have a history of drug problems.
Please remember that all of those that we deal with, they are convicted felons, and our parole officers have a very tough job in balancing those two priorities of holding them accountable for their conditions of parole while at the same time helping them in their transitional process find good jobs, get the mental health counseling that they need, substance abuse treatment, finding the right housing, and sex offender treatment where possible. Just give you an example of several things that our parole officers just very recently have encountered in doing their job on the street and making those visits. Up in Marietta, just very recently, making a routine visit, walked into a working meth lab. Up in Lafayette County, made 3 unscheduled visits, located 3 separate working meth labs, and in one of those labs there was a very small child that had a piece of the meth lab tubing in their mouth.
We'll have more of today's budget testimony later in our broadcast.
Last year, the General Assembly passed House Bill 237 that mandated cleaner rivers across the state. Today, the Georgia Water Coalition held a rally at the Capitol to say, though they're pleased with the passage of the bill, they're afraid enforcement of the act is not as strict as it should be. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman joins us live with that story. Jesse.
Well, thank you, Gerald. The Georgia Water Coalition says that the state needs to fully fund efforts to curtail pollution running into streams and rivers. They rallied at the Capitol today to voice that concern, as well as to draw attention to the importance of environmental conservation. The Georgia Water Coalition is made up of over 100 groups, all with one concern.
Our rivers are sick. We are finding more and more problems every day that are directly resulting from a problem that is pretty easy to figure out. It's not a mystery at all. We have too much pollution going into our rivers from upstream, and we have too much water being taken out of our rivers.
Coalition members were joined today by House Civil Judiciary Chair Wendell Willard.
It's not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. It is, in fact, an issue that's important to all of us. In fact, one of the things we're looking to do is begin forming a conservation caucus in Georgia in the legislature will be made up of persons from both parties who have the belief that this is a concern for all legislators, and that is protect the valuable natural resources we have in our state.
Now, the Georgia Water Coalition also voiced favor for two bills that are now in the House that would limit water basin transfers, House Bills 53 and 55. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Jesse, before you go in, the tape, Representative Willard mentioned the possibility of a conservation caucus. Did you find out anything about when that caucus might be formed?
Well, Gerald, Representative Willard said that right now it's just a seed of an idea, but that he would get to work on it as the session progresses. All
right, Jesse, thank you very much.
The Board of Regents today presented its $1.7 billion budget to the Joint House-Senate Appropriations Committee. The university system plan includes $70.2 million for renovation and construction. $10 million of that would be for the rehabilitation of historic buildings at Georgia College, almost $27 million to upgrade the physical education facilities at the University of West Georgia, $20.5 million for a distance learning building at North Georgia College, and $12.7 million for classrooms at Savannah State. Chancellor Thomas Meredith said that the $65 million designated for maintenance is a high priority because over half the system facilities are at least 25 years old.
Those of you with older homes know full well the importance of keeping up with maintenance, or in a very short period of time you have a maintenance cost that almost becomes prohibitive. And that's why these funds for maintenance are extraordinarily important to us. The governor's recommendation for MR&R funds of $65 million is found on line 1 is critical to maintaining our institution's facilities.
Chancellor Meredith also predicted a 6% enrollment increase at the state colleges and universities next year, but Senator George Hooks questioned why the number of native Georgians admitted to Georgia Tech and the University of Georgia is declining.
These are the people that fill up the football stands, that give money to the foundations that support you. These people that have moved into this state don't.
Yeah. It is a real challenge for everyone involved in dealing with this, because you have Georgia Tech, of course, has always been good and getting better. University of Georgia has now moved into the top ranks of this country in terms of academic recognition and quality. And when you do that, then your capacity hits a certain level and not enough people can get in. So institutions, you know, it's sort of a two-edged sword. You become really good, and now you have to turn away students that used to be able to get in. You know, so many alums tell me they probably couldn't get in Georgia now at all.
The Georgia Public Telecommunications Commission, which operates Georgia Public Broadcasting, is also represented in the Board of Regents budget for fiscal year 2006. The governor proposes a budget of $31 million for the GPTC. The Department of Technical and Adult Education outlined a four-pronged strategy to support the governor's business development initiatives. The DTAE guarantees 2,600 graduates trained in allied health fields, transportation, energy and environment, and agriculture. However, Commissioner Mike Vollmer today told legislators that changes to the Hope Scholarship and tight budgets have reduced enrollment in the state's technical schools.
We've had about a 5% decrease, and I gave the governor 3 reasons for it. Number one, what you all did with the HOPE program was a good move. And what I mean by that is you limited the number of hours that a student could have under the HOPE program. That needed to be done. But now what happens is we are seeing a little decrease in our high school enrollment for this first year because students are concerned about using up their HOPE hours immediately in high school. I think we can change that. But that's the first reason. We've seen a decrease in our high school enrollment. The second reason is, again, the hour cap that was placed on. And that was when students were on that waiting list. Let's say we have 13,000 students on a waiting list. If there was no cap on the hours, what penalty was it for me just to take some courses because it wasn't counting against me for HOPE? Secondly. Thirdly, quite honestly, was a funding issue. We're not here to complain, but our funding has obviously not been reduced, but been pretty static, so you can't create new classes for that demand.
Yesterday, we reported on the progress of the governor's Fast Forward program to ease traffic congestion across the state. Today, Transportation Department Commissioner Harold Lenin-Cole reported before the Joint Appropriations Committee and gave more good news about that and other DOT programs, including increased funding for local projects.
Most needed, some examples of this, it can be used for anything, but most of it is used for local access roads, intersection improvements, road widening projects. In rural Georgia, we use a lot of most needed for economic development prospects where local governments are bringing, they'll entice in through their economic development means they'll bring in an industry, a new industry into the area. They may need some kind of transportation facility such as a turn lane, passing lanes, anything like this to get people into that economic development prospect. We can use our most needed for that. They can be used, as I said earlier, they can be used for either off-system or on-system. The category title is most needed, but we always, ever since I have been associated with this, since the early 80s, all of it has gone toward county roads and city streets. This year, the governor has recommended $6.5 million to go into this category. This is the first time, and we're real pleased with this, but this is the first time that any money has been in the most needed category since 2002. So we're real pleased with that.
Also from the transportation world, the State Ports Authority outlined its budget at the Joint Appropriations hearing today. External Affairs Director Robert Morris cited a study by the University of Georgia when he suggested that future growth for Georgia's ports was looking high.
What UGA found was that Georgia's deepwater ports directly and indirectly support 275,000 jobs in the state, are responsible for $35.4 billion in annual sales, $10.8 billion in annual income, and $1.4 billion in state and local taxes every year. The study's authors, Dr. Jeff Humphreys and Dr. Barbara Bart, concluded, as the state and nation economies gain momentum, Georgia's deepwater ports will thrive, generating even more substantial economic impacts in future fiscal years. The study went on to say, even in tough economic times, continued emphasis on the ports as a pillar of the state's economy translates into jobs, higher income, greater production of goods and services, and revenue collections for government.
Georgia Regional Transportation Authority Director Steve Stansel also outlined his agency's budget before the Joint Appropriations Committee today. The authority works to improve travel conditions and air quality for Georgia's 13 counties designated non-attainment by the Federal Clean Air Act. After he was warned lunchtime was near, Director Stansel was very brief. Short of the introductory remarks, here's the presentation in its entirety.
If you will look in 06 on page 151, you'll see our budget. The salary adjustments for $28,000. Let's see, another $33,000. The health benefits, $14,000. We eliminated one position to save $44,000, so there's an increase of $28,682, and I bet we're the only agency that comes in that small. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Director, I don't see any questions. I thank you so much for being patient and waiting on us, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy your lunch.
A popular man around lunchtime. We at Lawmakers are checking our extensive records, but no word yet if that is indeed the shortest budget hearing speaker ever.
Well, for those of you with access to the internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org. For more information, click on Watch Online, then follow the instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmakers programs in our archives. That website, again, is gpb.org. Just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on at the General Assembly.
And we would like to recommend another website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.legis.state.ga.us. That website is a great research tool we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
Now back to the budget hearings. Corrections Commissioner James Donald outlined the department's fiscal situation at this afternoon's budget hearings. Among the changes he's seeking is an expansion of the day reporting centers for some drug offenders.
We treat the problem through formal drug therapy. At any given day, we have about 20,000 nonviolent felons in our system. We're going to open up 4 new day reporting centers in Macon, Jonesboro, Tifton, and in Rome, Georgia. We require the inmate to report every morning. We drug test him every other morning. There's a surveillance officer on station. We talk to the family, bring the family in, and we tell the family if your dad smokes that crack or use that meth, he could be back into a state prison tomorrow with 100 other inmates.
Commissioner Donald also wants to bring business into the prison system, modeled after a South Carolina program which gives prisoners jobs and skills that can benefit them and the prison system.
It gives men and women an opportunity to learn a skill. Right now, I can work up only about 10% of the population. It means as many as 40,000 are not able to work either in an outward basis outside the facility or working for corporations or industry in the community. That's because of their security classification.
Now, the prisoners would receive wages in this program, but nearly half would be taken out for victim restitution, room and board, and in many cases, child support.
Department of Juvenile Justice Commissioner Albert Murray also spoke at today's budget hearings. He said their top concern is population control, but among other initiatives is what he called a probation revocation program. This aims to keep minor and major juvenile offenders out of the same circles.
Despite our best efforts at programming, when we have that mix, in many cases it allows for this category of young people to learn how to become better criminals rather than be rehabilitated. So we're seeking what's called a probation revocation program, which will allow sanctions for these young people at increments up to 45 days. It also allows the court to, again, continue and incarcerate those young people who need the more serious consequences long term.
Commissioner Murray added that housing for juvenile justice is at full capacity.
Also at today's budget briefings, Georgia's Commissioner of Public Safety said budget cuts in recent years have contributed to the shortage of state troopers on our highways.
Our funding level decreased from $91.9 million in fiscal year 03 to $75.5 million in fiscal year 05, a loss of $15.4 million. And the governor's recommended fiscal year 06 budget, the recommendation is for $78.9 million, which is an increase of $3.4 million. As I stated earlier, most of our financial resources are utilized for personal services, and the reductions have impacted staffing levels. We are authorized 953 troopers and currently have 784, which leaves 169 vacancies. Our authorization level for communications officers is 253, and we have 182, which leaves 71 vacancies. The shortage of communications officers further compounds the shortage of troopers because troopers have to work radio duty to fill in the shifts for which communications personnel aren't available. During each of the last 2 months, troopers have expended over 3,000 hours statewide working radio shifts instead of patrolling the highways. Again, we are more than willing to do our pro rata share during the economic downturn. What really concerns me long term is that we currently have funding to hire 10 to 15 communications officers who are having a difficult time with recruiting applicants. With a salary of $20,000 per year for a job that requires extensive background investigation, a polygraph examination, and a work schedule that includes weekends, holidays, and shift work, we currently only have 6 individuals statewide who have completed the requirement for employment.
The head of the Public Defender Standards Council told legislators today that regional contributions allow the 43 circuit defender offices to keep salaries under the state limit. The 2003 Indigent Defense Act caps public defenders at 90% of what prosecutors earn.
When we hire and pay for a circuit defender in Reedsville, in that area, I can only pay them $87,000 a year pursuant to the budget because the legislation caps it at that. The prosecutors get $97,000. Now, counties supplement some of the prosecutors, and counties hopefully will supplement some of our circuit defender's office, but they're not required to do so.
Superior Court judges are asking the General Assembly to use a supplemental appropriation to fund an additional 10 judgeships. Representative Wendell Willard suggested that the Council of Superior Court Judges has traditionally submitted an inflated budget.
Sir, the budget requests that are before this body, I believe, are, to my knowledge, are legitimate requests. There is not padding. These represent actual real needs in the judicial branch. And if you have particular if you want me to respond more particularly, I'll be glad to do so. But there is not intentional padding in regard to trying to inflate something in regard to our budget request.
The judicial branch is requesting a total of $195 million in the 2006 budget.
Well, today, First Lady Mary Perdue encouraged a group of volunteers to get involved in her Our Children campaign. The program aims to protect Georgia's abused and neglected children. Lawmakers Chriss Knight has that story.
First Lady Mary Perdue addresses a group of volunteers on ways they can help make Georgia a better place for children.
I think the word is getting out that we do have over 16,000 children in foster care in Georgia. And I think the people are becoming more aware of what the needs are around the state.
The volunteers are members of the Metro Atlanta Corporate Volunteer Council.
We're a membership organization of companies in the Atlanta metropolitan area who have volunteer programs in the community.
This is a group that is here to learn of volunteer opportunities.
And today, this group learned the benefits of the First Lady's Our Children campaign.
It's important for the everyday Georgian to think about these children who are in foster care and find a way to help them. I hope that they'll take the information that we've left and that many of them will look at what they're doing in their corporations and businesses and either step up their activity to become a champion for children in Georgia, or will begin to do some things with children in foster care in their own communities.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Chriss Knight.
And we apologize for the technical problems at the beginning of that report. In other news, members of the Sons of the Confederate Veterans gathered at the Capitol today to celebrate the birthday of Robert E. Lee. Lawmakers Angela Vondrasek has more.
The event began with a march to the Capitol, followed by several speeches highlighting Lee's values and the importance of their Southern heritage. Several state representatives joined the Sons of Confederate Veterans to take part in the event, celebrating the life of Robert E. Lee.
Heritage is a wonderful thing, and we should never forget our heritage. We should instill it in our children, our grandchildren. We should remember our past. We should carry it on into the future.
If you don't know your history and where you came from, you don't know where you're going to go. Where are we today in this society?
The event takes place every year on January 19th in celebration of General Lee's birthday.
This isn't a protest. This isn't a demonstration. This is a celebration of a great man's birthday.
In Dixieland, I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Angela Vondrasek.
Well, lawmakers will not be seen tomorrow because the Georgia General Assembly is not in session. We'll return Monday, January 24th for Legislative Day 4. The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to begin addressing tort reform legislation on Monday. We'll have that story and all the latest from Under the Gold Dome. That's Monday, January 24th at 7 p.m. And if you missed any part of this broadcast, tune in when Lawmakers is rebroadcast tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. on GPB. And also just a reminder for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Lawmakers is streamed live, then archived on our website every night that we're on the air. Coming up tomorrow on Georgia Public Broadcasting Radio, coverage of President George W. Bush's inauguration. That starts at 11:30 a.m. on Georgia Public Radio. Now, stay tuned for Life Laundry. That program's coming up next right here on GPB.
Sometimes I'd like to launder my own life. And that's our broadcast for the second and final day of budget briefings at the state capitol. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. For everyone here at Lawmakers, good night.